So we have prepared a full program today with lots of opportunity for interaction throughout. We will begin by introducing the toolkit, and then we will start a conversation between us team members. So we will be talking about how the research toolkit was developed. We will talk about democratizing research, about co-production, about accessible writing, and the role of arts. This will then be followed by a discussion and Q&A session, and then we'll explore how you can contribute to the toolkit going forward and put some links at the end into the chat so that we can hopefully stay in touch over the coming months. So I'm now going to hand over to Nathan Rendell, who is working tirelessly behind the scenes, helping us out with the technology. He will run us through some of the key features, especially the Mentimeter that we want to use for some of our interactions. So I'll just hand it over to you, Nathan. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hannah, and a warm welcome to everyone to today's session. So there is a few ways that we can engage with each other today. You can use the meeting chat, so that's a Zoom meeting chat. That's open for you to send messages to individuals or speak to each other. We'll be using an online engagement tool called Mentimeter. You'll see a QR code in the bottom right-hand corner, and you're welcome to scan that to get started on that Mentimeter. But we'll come back to that and give some more guidance when we use that tool very shortly. And a bit later on, we'll have an opportunity for a Q&A. Questions can be submitted via Mentimeter, and once we finish with the engagement Mentimeters, the Mentimeter will swap to be a Q&A tool, so you can submit questions through there. And then you can also send questions into the meeting chat as well. If you wanted to remain anonymous at any point, you're welcome to change your names, as Hannah has just mentioned. And we've also got BSL interpreters for those that need it. You'll see there's the interpretation icon on your Zoom dashboard. You can click that one and it'll open up the interpreters in that small box in your meeting window. Closed captions are also available using the CC icon on your Zoom dashboard as well. But if there's any technical issues or anything, please just message me directly and I'll be able to help you as the session goes on. Excellent.
So in the next step, I suppose, Nathan, you will explain a bit how to get there?
Absolutely. So you'll see on the screen there is a QR code. If you get your phones out, you can scan that QR code and access the Mentimeter there. It will just open up automatically. You'll also see in the chat there is a joining link with all the details included in there. So if you want to click on that Mentimeter link in the chat, that will take you straight to an input page where you can respond to questions as we go through the session. Alternatively, you can open up a phone browser and go to www.menti.com and enter in the numeric code you see at the top of the screen there. A few different ways to join. Then the first question is up and ready to go.
Thank you so much, Nathan. And if you have questions, please put them into the chat and we'll try to solve it. It would be lovely if you could engage with that question. So what words do you associate with research that is co-produced? But your answers should show very quickly here as a word cloud. So this is amazing. Oof, this is a lot going on. This is great. So it's collaborative, inclusive, multidisciplinary, participatory, decolonized, diverse, co-authoring, partnership, balanced, unexpected, I love that one, collaboration, evaluation, methods, good one, solidarity, empathy, democratic, relevant. Yeah, that would be nice if it always was. Ambiguous, fair, lots of positive vibes here. Challenging, definitely. Reliable, hope, very nice. Prove, mysterious, very nice. Together, innovative, leveling hierarchies, multidisciplinary. Oh, these are really nice. Thank you for for participating. Equal, powerful, validity, shared power, unbiased, representative, hard, yeah, fun, like that. Yeah, thank you very much. So lots of a positive vibe in the room, I can see. So this is exciting. Maybe we want to move on to our next question now that we have got a bit of a sense of the vibe in the room when it comes to research. And now here's a question on how comfortable you feel doing research.
Right. This one will be a lot easier to keep track of for you, Hannah.
Yes.
Yeah. And for those that have joined the Mensi, you won't need to input the codes or anything again, just return to the same submission screen and the question input will have changed. So you can respond to this question.
Lovely. And I wonder if we need to put the chat into the link into the chat again as people are joining still. So we have a real mix of people in the room. So really from very comfortable to comfortable. So that's most, somewhat neutral, uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. So this is great. This is exactly what we were hoping for. People really from different experience levels in the room, and just wonderful to welcome those of you who feel very uncomfortable and even neutral, because this is who we want to talk to bring research to a wider audience who might not maybe typically conduct research. So this is absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much. So we'll be moving on to the next slide, please. So now let's delve in. This research toolkit that we're really happy to launch today grew out of a passion that many of us felt, that I felt, for making research everybody's business. Research, in my view, is not owned by the academy, by universities, colleges, institutes. Research can be conducted by anyone who has questions about the world we live in. And depending on our various standpoints, experiences, perspectives, maybe also professional backgrounds, we will ask different questions, pursue different leads, and use different methods. So by advocating for such a plurality of research endeavors, I'm also advocating for the generation of richer and more nuanced insights into the lives and about our world. And this is what makes me passionate about research. Next slide, please. Questions that I grappled with for actually many years were, what is research? Who is a researcher? How is research produced? Who benefits from research? And I don't think there are easy answers to this question. And while the vibe in this room when we did the Mentimeter was extremely positive about research, this is not necessarily what I come across when I talk to community groups, people outside of research, or people who feel that research is done about them rather than with them. I often get a sense that people also associate research with universities where quote unquote experts carry out systematic inquiry into their lives from different disciplinary perspectives. They associate it with gold standards, stiff hierarchies, privilege, often quite inaccessible writing in journals behind paywalls that are unaffordable for many people to access if they're not in academia. And I didn't think it had to be like this. First of all, it is my view that everyone can be a researcher, as I said before, that researchers don't have to look or behave in a certain way, and that research can take place anywhere, inside and outside academia. And to foster this, I wanted to create a resource that can help people to produce their own research by pursuing questions and problems that are important to them and their communities. Next slide, please. And to do this, I believed this should not be done just by myself. That would defeat my passion in a way. So I thought we would really need to bring together a diverse team of researchers to do this, to get it right. So we came together as a team of service users, survivors, academics, students, project coordinators, and artists from the Center for Society and Mental Health and the Bethlehem Gallery to think about how we could produce a meaningful research for people inside and outside academia so that we could change the ways in which research is done. So in partnership and really close working relationship, we created this online Research Methods Toolkit so that anyone who wants has access to high quality and hopefully engaging resources. And our approach is rooted in inclusive partnership working, something that people often refer to maybe as co-production. There are different terms, but I suppose I prefer maybe inclusive partnership working, which was guided by the 4PI framework that is outlined by the National Service User Network. And thank you for putting that into the chat if people want to explore this further. The 4 Ps and the I stand for principles, purpose, presence, process, and impact. And the aim is here to meaningfully involve people with lived experience to make a difference. But instead of now going into this in greater detail, we will have more of a conversation along these lines later. I want to move to our vision. That's the next slide, please. So the vision was that we as a team wanted to democratize research and reshape the nature of how it is done. A vision is, of course, a bit unattainable, a bit idealistic, maybe. We're quite aware of that. But so we also formulated our mission. And this we hope is more realistic, to actually provide a tool to empower people to produce their own research by pursuing questions, as I said before, and problems that are important to them and their communities. This, we believe, can be done by strengthening research capacity, by giving people access to high-quality resources, introducing them to research design, research ethics, qualitative and quantitative methods, participatory and more creative approaches, analysis, and knowledge exchange. And thereby our objective was to build an online Research Methods Toolkit, which we're launching, with links to external content that is varied in style and format. And what is important here is that we are purposefully building this toolkit in public. So what you're seeing today is not the end product. There will never be an end product, because we believe that research needs to be agile, it's ever evolving, and we will just create and continue to create content by adding and revising the toolkit. And we hope that over time, some of you might be contributing to the toolkit as well. So it's never going to be finished, and we are always open for feedback. To give you a bit of a flavor of the toolkit and how we envision it could be used, we created a short video that we would like to show. And I would just like to mention that this was, again, a nice collaboration in which the video was produced. Our PhD student, Esther Putzgruber, created the visuals of the video, so the actual video. Maya Ramachandra created the text for the video, so the script. And then Walia Mulenga, who is a lived experience advisory group member, did the voiceover. So again, it's very much homemade, the video. So Nathan, I'm handing over to you for us to get this sort of flavor of the toolkit. Thank you.
How to use the toolkit. The toolkit follows the idea of the research cycle. The research cycle doesn't simply run from start to finish. You can join at any stage according to your own needs and ambitions. Imagine you work at a mental health charity helping young people in your local area. You want to investigate the impact the COVID-19 lockdowns and restrictions had on young people's mental health and well-being. To develop this research idea, let's discuss some questions. What is your research question? How can you ensure your study is ethical? Who is your target population? How will you recruit young people for the study? What data will you collect? Statistical or descriptive? How will you interpret and present this data? How will you share your findings? Let's explore the toolkit to answer these questions. In getting started, we can explore reflexivity, study design in qualitative research, study design in quantitative research, finding a research topic, research questions, hypotheses, carrying out a literature review. You've now conducted a literature review, and using the step-by-step guide in the toolkit, developed a research question. How did the COVID-19 lockdowns and social restrictions from 2020 to 2022 impact the mental health and well-being of young people aged 12 to 18? Let's consider the ethics of your study. You require informed consent and procedures protecting participants from physical and mental harm. It is important to note, discussing mental health and the COVID-19 pandemic may be distressing for participants. Participants will be under the age of 18. You will need to get parental consent as well as informed consent. Participant data must remain private and confidential. Participants must have anonymity. You can use the Research Ethics tab to explore these pages further. Next, how do we recruit participants? Let's read the qualitative sampling page and explore snowball and purposeful sampling, two types of qualitative sampling. You decide purposeful sampling is the most appropriate, and you select participants who are open to discussing their mental health, not currently diagnosed with any mental health conditions, aged between 13 to 18 years old, lived in your local area during the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's consider how to conduct your study. You decide to conduct a qualitative study. In the toolkit, you can learn about semi-structured interviews and focus group discussions. As a community mental health charity, you value young people leading the discussion and together sharing their mental health experiences. Therefore, you decide to conduct a focus group discussion. The introduction outlines what is a focus group discussion? Why do researchers conduct focus group discussions? How to conduct a focus group? Strengths and limitations. All pages on the toolkit are structured the same, including a range of open access resources. For example, under How is it done? You can watch a 5-minute animated summary video or an hour-long lecture on focus group discussions. Methods in action. You learn the practical application of the approach. This example explains how a study used focus group discussions to capture the lived experience of people who have used mental health care services in Europe. Once you've conducted your focus group discussions, it's important to share your findings. Congratulations! You've now conducted your study and shared your findings. Don't worry, your research journey doesn't end here. You may want to use the Finding a Research Topic page on the toolkit to generate new research ideas. You can continue to develop your knowledge by exploring the short university courses and websites linked under online courses and other resources. If you've used the toolkit, please send us any questions, comments, or suggestions via the Contact Us section found at the end of every page on the toolkit. If you've conducted a community research study that's an example of a method in action, please send it to us. We'd love to showcase your work. Whether you're at the start of a research journey or an experienced researcher who wants to refresh their knowledge, you can use the toolkit at every stage of your research cycle. So please explore the toolkit and learn how it can support you and your team on your research journey.
Brilliant. I hope everybody got the gist. The one aspect that was now not mentioned in the video, but which we will come to later, is how you can actually be in conversation with us. But don't worry, we'll get to that. But I hope you get a sense of what this toolkit is about, and that you could also see that it was produced with a lot of joy. I think that comes across in that video as well. We did actually have a lot of fun. So I love the word fun in the word cloud at the beginning. We did have a lot of fun, a lot of laughs as we were creating the toolkit, because we could be as creative as we wanted. So now I'm just moving us on to the conversation with the team, about which I'm really excited about, for you to hear from some of the different people who were involved also from the very beginning in the development of the toolkit. And everyone will have 10 minutes to sort of present, engage in a conversation, and will sort of shepherd this along. I will be busting in. I will make light of it, but if we're going over time, I will interrupt, so that there is enough time for each group to have their conversation, and so that we don't take time from the discussion and Q&A with the audience as well. So be prepared that I might show up in between to remind people of the time. But first of all, I'm really excited to kick this off with my colleague Walia Mulenga. I suppose, Nathan, you will pin Walia so that we can be in a conversation together. So first of all, it is a great pleasure to kick us off with Walia, because Walia was there from the very beginning. She had applied for a research internship with me in 2020 during the pandemic, and I thought, gosh, what shall we do? We can't meet. It's the pandemic. We're in lockdown. Then I thought, actually, I had this passion for a toolkit somehow to make this research accessible for everyone. So we just sat down and thought about it together, and Walia started to play around with different features, and then we brought the team together to develop the toolkit. And so as we were developing the toolkit, we thought about the notion of around democratizing research. So Walia, I was wondering if you could tell us more about what we had in mind then when we were talking about democratizing research. A big word.
Yes, a big word indeed. Well, thank you for the introduction. But yeah, as you say, to start with, we were thinking, what does it even mean to democratize research? That was definitely our number one question. And for us, it involved thinking about who typically holds power and knowledge, and devising a way of challenging this, empowering those who traditionally do not do their own research with the tools and means to do so if they wanted to. And accessibility was a major issue that we know often prevents communities from engaging with research. For instance, unless attached to an academic institution, a lot of research is blocked by paywalls and closed access, making it inaccessible for those beyond the field of academia. Likewise, research and information on research methods can be full of confusing language, which also makes it really difficult to engage with. Essentially, we believe that within the field of society and mental health, different communities need to work together with access to the relevant tools and know-how. And so we've begun to think about how we can support and encourage communities and organizations to learn about methods, conduct research, and exchange knowledge in areas that are important to them. So that was an excellent question, Hannah. I hope I answered it clearly.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is great. And again, there's so much to say when it comes to democratizing research. And to ensure that our toolkit then was in fact needed, and it was just not just a brainchild of ours, we decided to conduct a UK-wide survey with community-based organizations working broadly in the field of society and mental health. And Walia, you were key in the development of this survey. Maybe it would be great to hear a bit more about it, and also about some of the key and striking findings that you remember.
Yes, sure. Could I have the next slide, please? Yeah, so first and foremost, as you say, we needed to ascertain whether this was something that would actually benefit our intended users of the website and not just a little fun project that we wanted to do for the fun of it. And we conducted a survey to capture the insights and perception of organizations that offer mental health support across the UK. And from this research, we found that our participants regularly engaged in research activities as part of their roles. Could we go to the next slide, please? And yet, as you'll see here, 43% of participants would not consider themselves comfortable with conducting research. Next slide. There were many factors that participants described as barriers to producing their own research in the field of society and mental health, with data that they could collect or may even already have in their possession. And these barriers included things like limited time, limited money, and not being able to find quality training. Next slide, please. So this needs assessment helped us establish the appetite for a virtual research methods toolkit to start with, the content that potential users would find valuable, and also how to make such a toolkit accessible. So Hannah, what exactly did we do with this information, and how did our needs assessment influence the development of a website prototype?
Thank you. Nathan, if you could move us to the next slide. So in fact, the needs assessment was really, really useful for us, because participants reminded us about the importance of making a toolkit like this really accessible. So they recommended, for example, that we should include alt text, transcriptions, and easy read options for resources, utilize colorblind, blind, and dyslexia-friendly designs, use simple language and varied resources to cater to different levels of experience, provide free, downloadable, and hard copy resources, and also translation tools. And we try to really take these recommendations serious, and we've managed already to implement some of them, but I feel like we still need to do better, and we will also depend again on users of the toolkit to let us know what it is that they want or need, so that we can sort of be nudged to improve the design in terms of accessibility as well. Next slide. Thank you. So based on this, again, needs assessment, we then created the website structure in a very, very simple way by literally doodling and mapping. Next slide, please. And here, where you can see my ability, my artistic skills, and you hear the irony in my voice here, where we try to sort of figure out what is it that we want the website to look like. For some reason, I thought people conducting research should be wearing hats, so we refer to them as little witches. So we had good fun with those. Next slide, please. It soon became apparent that it would be a really complex endeavor, multi-layered, so that we would need to consult with a web designer to help design it for us. Next slide, please. And then we started to develop the content itself, thinking about key topical areas, again, that were also mentioned in the needs assessment, thought about the different types of resources for learning about different aspects of research, including training courses, videos, blogs, templates, articles, books. And we thought about grouping them then into what is it, how is it done, methods, and action, very much what you could see in the video. Next slide, please. We're now moving to the focus group discussion, because then we started to sort of develop that content, but weren't sure whether we were actually hitting the nail on the head. So we decided to run a focus group discussion with people with lived experience, with community organizations, really people from different walks of life, people who had no exposure, no experience in research, people who felt that they were quite experts in the field, to sort of get a different feel for this. And Walia, you were again so centrally involved in this. Maybe you want to reflect a bit on these focus groups.
Yeah, to add to what you were saying, it was really important that we nailed everything about the website, from the tone of the language that we were using to the way that we were laying out the website. And so to do this, we conducted a focus group discussion, which, like you said, was made up of participants with various backgrounds, different experiences of research, so that they could feedback on our initial content development. And participants commented on the language and the level of information that was used across the web pages that we presented them, the kinds of resources that were made available, and the general structure and design of the web pages, which included the layout and the way we cited the resources. And this stage was invaluable. And the information that came out of it was then used to inform our style guide, which we used as a template to create all future content developed for the website. So that's how we developed the style guide, Hannah. I hope that, yeah, you can see how we kind of set up the formatting for the website.
Yes, thank you. So you can see it has been a slow moving project, but because we wanted it to be really meaningful, really engage with possible users from the very start, and not just sort of at the end when the final product would already be there. So I think that is really important to say as well, that it was a slow process, but one with a lot of reflection, a lot of trials and errors, until we got to that stage where we are now. But now I want to hand over, and we can move to the next slide very briefly before taking it down, to Sonia Thompson and Rick Burgess, both members of the Lived Experience Advisory Board at the center, and who were again part of the development of the toolkit from the very, very start, and who want to talk about important topics, including co-production, the design of the website, etc. So floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just looking for Rick now. Just trying to see him on the screen somewhere. I'm sure. Oh, there you are, Rick. Hi, as you can see, my name is Sonia Thompson, and I'm on the Lived Experience Advisory Board. And, you know, I was thinking to myself, what am I doing here? There's so many other things that I could choose to do. I'm thinking about the fact that I haven't cooked dinner yet, and I've had 2 injections, 2 vaccinations, one for flu and one for COVID today, and yet I still turned up. So, you know, people were talking about fun. It was fun. It's really enjoyable working with Hannah and the team, and it has definitely been a co-productive process. It isn't one where I've felt where I've been just brought in to rubber stamp things. What about you, Rick? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. From the very beginning, we've been involved all the way through, and that's sort of kind of what I use the metaphor of the artwork, which you'll hear more about in a bit. But just sort of briefly, we had the idea early on when we had a sort of prototype website that had lots of corporate stock photography. I'm short of the sort I'm sure you're aware of, and it wasn't giving the right vibe at all. So I had an idea that we would get a survivor artist to paint a really big original artwork, and then we could take little sections of that, little vignettes, and each part of those could replace the stock photography around the site. So across the site, you see these fragments of a larger work, but that's also to push the metaphor to its limits here. That does also represent how we're doing research. It can be fragmentary. It is not going to create like the whole picture as much as we might want. But one thing we wanted to do and make sure that this website enabled was for groups that aren't usually doing research or don't have power or control over that research start to get involved with research, start to pick up these tools, use them. And those fragments, those different pieces, those knowledge, that creation of knowledge becomes more democratized, becomes more from the people who are actually often, the subjects of research, but actually aren't controlling it. And so it was about slowly, devolving that power to people to do research. So universities work with them, that they share their resources, and those fragments become more indicative of reality as opposed to a sort of a top-down, oh, let's study the peasants sort of approach.
Absolutely. In fact, I think it would be fair to say that we were very much involved in the helping to focus the purpose of the site itself, in recognition of that differential power dimension between people who are often subjects within research, as opposed to driving research. And I do come with a hat on from another organisation where I'm a co-director. We are survivors who encourage other people who are survivors to get involved in research at any level. So a toolkit like this is absolutely brilliant. It's a way in for lots and lots of people. We know what the third sector, for example, is like. Not enough money, incredibly fragile, talking a different language from the decision makers. So the decision makers are talking about evidence. Where's your evidence? Where's your information? Often talking about numbers. And the people who are in the third sector, particularly the community sector, don't have the resources or the time, often don't feel skilled or confident enough to be able to gather the information to make sure that the people who use the services that have been developed, that their voice comes over, that it's about us. We want to be there to shape the sort of services that organisations create for us. We want to have access to resources. We want to influence the funders. So this is so fantastic. I used to work in evaluation, and this is one of the areas that people often talked about. They often felt that, they didn't think, for example, about what sort of information they'd be collecting throughout the lifetime of the project, and they'd wait until the end of the project and scramble about to get little bits and pieces of information, when they could have just set something up right from the beginning, sorted out an evaluation plan, be collecting the data as they went along. And so particularly the most marginalised community groups continued to just bob along at the bottom, £1,000 here, £2,000 there, £500 for this and that. And yet they are often the groups that are most meeting people's desperate needs, because very often people go, I need this particular service, and they go out to and nobody's providing it. So they set it up for themselves, but they never get over that hurdle to get to the next level or to the next level. But this is a magnificent tool. And the really important thing to think about this, remember, it's been co-produced, a space has been created from the beginning to now. We want it to continue. We want that co-production to continue. We want you to go out and spread the word that this space is still open. This is the place where people from the communities and from various different places can come back and influence what goes onto the website. You can continue to upload information. You can continue to help to grow this co-productive space. Doesn't end here.
Yeah, I think I want to make it very clear. This is the website at a stage where we thought it's good enough to show to people and they won't hate us. But that doesn't mean it's fixed. This is where it's up to now. In 2 years, it could look incredibly different. It wants to be what is useful to the purpose. And the purpose is to democratize research, or narrowing the gap between what is done and by whom and the people the research impacts. Creating knowledge to create change. Really, nothing about us without us. I think Sonia used to say that before. I know I'm saying that bit. But, that's what is key, and that's really, really important, because funding is an ideological thing. It is a political thing. Who studies what is a political thing. We know a lot about poorer people. We know very little about richer people with a lot of power. So this is really, giving the tools, giving the weapons, even hopefully to people to make change and to make more, equity happen in society. And I think that's what I'd really like to sort of finish with, is that we really want to create research, or this to inspire or create research that is used to change things, to make them not so horrible, because we're in a situation where things are pretty horrible and we need to change them. Research is one of the tools we can do for that, but it also has to be owned by the people that are subject to these power structures. So that's what we're trying to do, and it is what it is. Please come along and change it, improve it. This is the beginning of it, and hopefully it's going to be useful to a lot of people.
Okay. I have nothing more to add. Thank you, Rick. Hand it back to you, Hannah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, both of you, for your reflections, heartwarming words that you said. And I would now like to hand over to Julia and Maya, both of them undergraduate students who just this summer produced content for this website. And maybe for me, just to say very briefly that a lot of that content has been actually developed by our students, so undergraduate students, master's students, PhD students, amongst others. So who I believe got a lot of learning out of this, of how to write accessibly, because in the university system, we're trained to write inaccessibly. So now this was about unlearning some of this again. So I'm just going to hand over to both of you. So floor is yours.
Hi. So like Hannah said, me and Julia had the pleasure of working as research assistants for the Research Methods Toolkit as part of the King's Undergraduate Fellowship. So we worked with Hannah and the Lived Experience Board to research and help organise this launch event. We were also involved within the expanding of the toolkit, so finding new resources to add to the current pages. And we also wrote our own pages. So I wrote a piece on qualitative observations, and Julia will show you now her pages and how we both developed our skills in writing accessibly. I don't know if you want to share the screen as well.
Oh, I think momentarily.
Okay.
So I think writing accessibly is just a very valuable skill in itself. I think to write crisply, clearly, and straightforwardly takes, surprisingly, as May and I both found out this summer, much more effort than typical academic jargon. But it's definitely a valuable skill with a worthwhile goal, because through the process of making it more accessible and engaging, you better understand what you're saying, but then you can also communicate what you're trying to say in a better way that can be more widely understood. So on the PowerPoint now, you can see how you can do this. So for the purposes of this presentation, I've shared my very questionable first draft, which you can see is the top one, which I'll read out now for audio listeners. It's an introduction to my guide on participatory mapping. So let's say you're researching how people feel about their neighborhood. How can you understand their experiences beyond the questions you ask them? This is where you can use participatory mapping. Now, this is an okay introduction, but it's not very engaging. It's almost quite abstract, especially with that second question. Like, what questions am I talking about? If you're someone with a sort of less experience or knowledge in this, this is not very accessible. It assumes an intrinsic understanding of what I'm talking about. Whereas through the process of rewriting and understanding how to make something more accessible and engaging, we end up with the text on the bottom, which again, for audio listeners, I'll read out. wondering how post-COVID people around you perceive their environment. Do you know where it is in your neighborhood that people might feel anxious? How could aspects of the neighborhood be changed so they feel safer? One way to explore these questions is to visually map how people are experiencing the world around them. We call this research method participatory mapping. So it's saying the same thing, but it's communicated in a completely different way. First of all, engaging language. The questions in the second version prompt the reader to think about their own surroundings and their own feelings, encourages more reflection with concrete examples, like saying aspects of your neighborhood and relating it to like a concrete example of COVID. Encourages people to reflect more on their current circumstances and link it to see, okay, this is a research method, this is my experience, this is how I can combine the two. And what this means through this process, it means more clarity, more precision, it's more engaging and almost more actionable. So yeah, through writing, it can become more more widely understood and you understand it better. Can we go to the next slide? So with all of that, what I just said in mind, we'll give everyone a chance to think how they can sort of write and communicate accessibly themselves. Let us know in chat how this could be improved to be, again, more accessible and for like a wider audience. For audio listeners, I'll read it out. Correlation analysis is a tool/statistical method we can use to summarize trends between two variables. We can see how two variables change together. If one variable tends to go up, does the other variable also go up, or does the other variable go down? Through correlation analysis, we can see what the relationship between the two variables is. For example, as the amount of time spent on phone, brackets variable 1, increases, does feelings of anxiety, variable 2, increase or decrease? How do you think this could be improved? Yeah, so the thing with ChatGPT is sometimes it gives a lot of like fluffy language. It's not very clear and precise. So unless even if you tell it to be clear and precise, I've found like just going through it yourself and making sure you understand what you're saying, communicating that clearly, is just more accessible. Variable, yes.
And we've
go ahead, Maya.
We found that ChatGPT, it doesn't know the difference between necessarily academic language. So say here, what is a variable? ChatGPT wouldn't necessarily explain that. So it's definitely something that we have to do and we have to develop. But yeah, in the chat, saying giving examples, giving visual imagery is really important to allow people to engage with the text.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess, the word variable, this is written with the assumption that the person reading this understands what a variable is, which again, for the mission of democratizing research is not, it doesn't go, it's not aligned. I think we can go on to the next slide and we can see what this would perhaps look like more accessibly. Visually you can see we've broken down each sort of component and given a definition, sort of any notes that you might not know that are very like essential. For example, like note correlation doesn't show if one variable causes the other. And then I'll read out the first section so you can see how it's introduced. Now that you've collected quantitative data on your different variables, brackets things you're measuring, you need to ask yourself, is there a link between these variables? Are they related? The link between these variables is called correlation. So again, more engaging, but then it sort of very briefly and quickly explains what a variable is. Maya will now explain why writing accessibly is so important.
Yeah, so would you mind just going on to the next slide, just so we can... So in order to encompass the Research Methods Toolkit values of democratizing research, we wanted the toolkit and the launch event to be understandable and engaging to all those with no to little academic knowledge of research methods. So it was really important for me and Julia to learn the skills of writing accessibly over the summer so we could effectively add to the toolkit and add to making this launch event engaging. So for researching and developing this launch event, it was really helpful discussing our ideas with the Lived Experience Board. They had lots of helpful suggestions, such as using the chat function, having the BSL interpreters, and how we format this event. And just to conclude by saying, me and Julia really enjoyed working on the Research Methods Toolkit. It was such a valuable experience. And I think it's really important for university students to learn the importance of community research and how to create an engaging, accessible resource.
Great, thank you. Any more reflections or want to move on? Maya, Julia?
No, I think we're good.
That's it. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much. And really, it was such a joy seeing you learn over the summer and developing these writing skills, and suddenly see how you kicked off once you started to master that accessible writing, making the content just more exciting, engaging, learning how to develop a completely new tone of voice in your writing. So that was fantastic, and that is also true for the other students who were involved in that process and hopefully will be involved going forward in the future. So I'm now going to hand over to Michaela Ross, who will talk to us about the art that is connected to the Research Toolkit, because some of you might actually be surprised to see arts in the toolkit. And of course, Rick has already highlighted why that is, why not stock images. Michaela, over to you.
Fantastic. It's so good to be here and to be part of this really important discussion. My name's Michaela, and I am a research lead at the Bethlem Gallery, which is a small artist-run space plonked right in the middle of a very busy hospital. And we represent artists predominantly who have lived experience of mental health services. And we organise residencies and partnerships, particularly with our partner organisation, King's, because we're a kind of a King's Health partner. I just wanted to kind of touch on kind of a very long project that we've just concluded, which was the Wellcome-funded Mental Health and Justice Project. And it involved pairing artists with lived experience with academic researchers across King's, but primarily at the Institute of Psychiatry, Psychology and Neuroscience. And it's really interesting when you bring an artist into the mix. Very often people come up with questions about, can an artist be a researcher? And if so, what kind of knowledge do they produce? And I think kind of some of our academic researchers struggled with this idea of this parity with our kind of artists, because they couldn't quite grasp potentially what role they would have. And artists, particularly those who work within the field of mental health, are really good at interventions, particularly on site in the hospital. And I just wanted to show you here this fantastic modification of a sign by artist activist Dolly Sen, who works really with humour to kind of puncture these kinds of power relationships, I suppose, that are so kind of prevalent in hospital sites. But one thing that Dolly did say was art can highlight injustice and art can give a voice to injustice. And she said that during a seminar, and I just thought it was really important to kind of actually note that here. But many academic researchers just think that artists are there to illustrate research findings, or maybe help to kind of visualize information to help the public engage with research findings. But as we found, I think, through this project and through others, artists can be researchers and they do produce a specific kind of knowledge. Could I have the next slide, please? Rick went through our kind of like website and tried to kind of think about a particular artist who might suit the needs of the toolkit, and he landed on Tony Allen, who makes these big, splashy, expressive, sophisticated images, and we invited Tony to think of a commission for this website, explaining to him that the work would be fragmented and that it would be used in lieu of these more corporate images. And I think Tony struggled with this idea of the fragmentation initially. He wanted his work to be seen as a whole, and he still wants his work to be exhibited as a whole. So he wasn't entirely happy, I think, with it being kind of like cut up into little jigsaw pieces and used across the site. But because that was in the initial brief, he kind of went with it. I think kind of we're really used, I think now there's lots of evidence that kind of creative research methods can be really compelling and really useful. So they can kind of create a space for debate and dialogue around pressing societal issues. They can arguably increase research accessibility, and they can create new knowledge and alternative ways of thinking about a topic. So there's quite a good deal of evidence to kind of show the value of bringing artists into these partnerships. But perhaps what I'm more interested in is the status of the artist in relation to the academic researcher, and helping artists to think about whether a research identity might be potentially useful for them. And maybe I can have the next slide, please. Here's the beginnings of the artwork in the studio. You can see that kind of like Tony works with the canvas horizontal, so that he can spill quite liquid acrylic paint onto the surface and just see where it takes him. So the main thing about Tony's work, I think, is this engagement with the material, this conversation with the material that also has its voice. So it's a really interesting way of researching, and arguably a way of doing research, although I'm not sure Tony was convinced by that kind of that argument. So some artists think of themselves as researchers, engage with research and kind of academics on equal terms, and find a way of establishing a kind of an equal relationship within those kinds of parameters, I suppose. But Tony, I don't think, has ever considered himself to be a researcher. So I stood alongside him while he was making and asked him sometimes quite annoying questions, I think, about what kind of questions he was asking through his work. Maybe I could have the next slide, please. And he talked a lot about nature, about water, about change, about art offering a different way of being in the world. And I think there's something about art that artists are quite skilled at kind of not producing knowledge that resides in an object, but knowledge is produced through an encounter with other people, with materials, with the world. So the knowledge actually resides in that moment of encounter within the actual process itself. It reminded me as well of one of the researchers on the Mental Health and Justice Project, who was talking about insight. He raised this, he made this really important comment, I think. He said, artists are perfectly comfortable with the art of the impossible question. And that's the idea that artists can sit in the middle of that discomfort of asking questions that are impossible to answer. There are experts in the impossible question. That's often very uncomfortable for academic researchers who feel that they need to find answers. But it's an incredibly kind of like enriching process. And one of the kind of research identities that I've been sharing quite a lot with our artists at the Bethlehem Gallery is one developed by the theorist and academic Eric Rogoff at Goldsmiths, who talks about this idea of the research turn, or what she calls becoming research. She likes the idea of people actually becoming and embodying research. And she said for her, research is a mode of inhabiting the world in its own right, working from conditions of precarity, of scarcity, of sustainability. It's grounded in invention and speculation rather than proof and verification. And I think this idea of kind of, we are all researchers when we kind of encounter and overcome difficulties is something that's a kind of a really powerful idea for many of our artists, and allows them to kind of inhabit research, to become research on their own terms. I'm hoping there'll be kind of, I can see there's a few questions in the chat. These are kind of really huge issues, but I hope, and Tony himself hopes, that these kind of images, these fragments of the larger image, will act as kind of like provocations. So perhaps when you're going through the toolkit and you encounter these blobs and smears and splashes, you might ask yourself, what has that got to do with research? Could kind of inspire me to think of an enlarged, embodied understanding of research, rather than this kind of like fixed proof, verification and knowledge. But it's been a joy to be kind of like part of this bigger project. And it's just the beginning, as Rick said, and hopefully we'll be setting up a bit of a conversation with Tony, who can kind of explain a little bit more about his approach to research and his approach to the commission. And that will be made available at some point in the future on the website, I think. So yeah, looking forward to questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Michaela. And I think what you have shown here is that research itself, it's such a, I don't want to use the word fraud maybe, but it's really a challenging area. It's hard, if ever, to get it right. But we're striving to get things right with time. And that it's also a constant negotiation also with the artists who might be signing sort of an agreement, but then having second thoughts and continuing these conversations, being in dialogue over time. I think this is just really important to keep the conversation going. And also maybe to say we have this one piece of art, it's this huge canvas that we also want to have an exhibition of the actual art piece, not cut up. It's a piece that is intact, so maybe also to highlight that it was digitized, that we're cropping from it, but the artwork itself remains intact and we will exhibit it. And it is, of course, Tony's artwork. So you will hear about that in the future as well. And my hope is that we, get some more funding and produce more art that could be exhibited on that toolkit as well. Great. So thank you all for this sort of interesting conversation as well, and makes me think already about what we can do in the future going forward. So how you can contribute to the toolkit going forward. There are different ways. As we said at the beginning and throughout, the idea of the toolkit is that it's really never finished. The idea is that it's going to evolve, that we're building and changing it in public, and that different people will be invited to contribute to the content. I saw one question in the chat before where someone rightfully asked, well, where's the PPI page? Where's the co-production page? And in fact, and I could see Madison answered that question, it is almost finished, and it will be up there for you to review, and it has been produced by members of the Lived Experience Board, together with Madison, who is the coordinator of it. So again, this is a crucial content that will be coming. And so again, so there are different ways of getting involved. First of all, you can develop a methods page yourself in partnership with us, with the team. And the partnership is there to make sure that the content is accessible, because accessible writing, as we all began to discover through this process, is not at all easy. That it's informatively written, that it features a range of resources produced by diverse groups of people. And so you're more than welcome to contact us and say, I would like to produce a page. There is a method that I'm passionate about that you haven't featured on the toolkit yet. Can we work together to develop that page? So very happy to do that. You're also more than welcome to suggest new resources. You can alert us if you, for example, find an interesting video, podcast, article, website, book that with regards to a particular method that we should be featuring on the website. That would be amazing if you shared such resources with us, and we would just be checking if it's high quality and also that it's not behind a paywall, because sometimes things are not behind paywalls for us because we have certain logins, and then it turns out there's a paywall for others. So that's basically what we would be checking here. You're also welcome to write a blog piece about your own research, where you could, for example, highlight the kind of research that you carried out in the field, broadly speaking, of society and mental health, showcasing the methods that you use, some of the striking findings that it produced, some of the key outputs that you would want to disseminate. So we would be really keen to showcase research that is emerging from the community, activist groups, people with lived experience, etc. But also, you are more than welcome to nudge us to do better in terms of accessibility, letting us know if links don't work, telling us if you found mistakes, etc. Like Rick said before, it's relatively easy to change things on the website, even though I am learning the ropes at the moment. But I hope over time things will go quicker for me as I'm fiddling with the background of the website. But yeah, so especially because as I'm sort of building the content pages now going forward, I'm sure I will make mistakes as I'm uploading things. I'm sure links will not be working. So I would be hugely grateful if I was told that something is not working. And as you do not just always remember, all the pages are produced by people. So we are grateful for that intervention. And then, of course, we're always happy to receive a thumbs up and some praise for the work we do as well. And I will make sure to relay that to the team. And you can get really easily in touch with us, because on the bottom of every page on the toolkit, so there's not just sort of a contact us box, but it's literally on every page. There you see this box that I screenshotted here on the page. We'd love to hear from you, where you can simply type in your questions, your suggestions, your corrections that you would like to see, and the email will be sent directly to my inbox. So it's not some obscure inbox somewhere where someone is dipping into it once a month, but it's coming to my email account. So this is really to say that we would love to hear from you, that we would like to stay in touch with you, that we would love to have more company in terms of building that tool with and for the community. So this is also here where I believe this sort of formal part comes to an end. But if there's a quick question on how to contribute to the toolkit, then I'm very happy to take that before we close the launch. Someone is asking if there could be access to the recording. So yes, there will be access. You will just have to wait until we have cropped it all out, so to make sure that it's anonymous, that the conversations are not part of this, so that it's just going to be the presentations. But yes, the recording will be available later on. You will just need to give us a bit of time. So what remains is to say a huge thank you, a huge thank you to the audience, but there are also a few other thanks that I want to give, because this would not have been possible without the support from our center professional services team as well. So there's Trudy Mensa, there's Ginny Elga, there's Verity Buckley, there's Franca Davenport, who have all been tremendously helpful in helping us to set this up, but also throughout the entire process of developing the toolkit. Also, really big thank you to Nathan Randall for the tech support so that things run smoothly, and then also to the wonderful BSL interpreters. So thank you very much for all your support here. This has made a huge difference. And then, of course, thank you to all the presenters and the team for having stuck with me since 2020 and hopefully going forward. So this has been a really joyful experience, and I hope we can continue this journey together in the future. So, and yes, use the toolkit, spread the word, and let us know how you find it, how useful you find it. So yeah, thank you very much.